What's up, guys? Saf here on SuperSaf Speaks, and welcome to episode 3 of the podcast with myself, your host, Saf.
And of course, Thunder E from Borderwork, your co-host.
And we've got an exciting episode again today. A few things we're going to be looking at. Firstly, via Twitter, via Twitter for iPhone, something that keeps coming up. Brands, Android brands, influencers that are tweeting ads of Android products from iPhones. This is something that still is happening to this day, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll also be talking about Apple on Twitter, like what is going on there. It's a bit of a mystery. Following on from that, WhatsApp. WhatsApp is still in the news, and there have been some updates around WhatsApp and their privacy policy, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to be talking about the new app on the block, something that is the talk of the town, really, and that is ClubHouse, the ClubHouse app, which myself and E both have been using. And we were actually discussing a topic on there that's also relevant, which we'll be talking about here. And that is about how to navigate brand deals as a content creator, influencer, and also what to look out for in contracts. The key things that we've learned over our past years of what to look out for on contracts. So it's gonna.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff, and there's some interesting examples of contracts that we've come across, which we'll also be touching on. Once again, I want to thank everybody that has been tuning in. Do please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts, and if you are following on Twitter, on YouTube, then do subscribe and drop some comments. Get involved. We really do appreciate feedback and drop suggestions for future podcast episodes. So. It's still happening.
Yeah.
It's 2021 and it's still happening. Everybody's still tweeting from iPhones, it seems.
Yes, it is. It is. It was one of those snafus that always happens right before launch events. And it just never fails. Just never fails.
Never fails. And the timing of this one. So last week, the day before the new S20 series, S21 series launch, the official Samsung Twitter account tweets, and you could see it there via Twitter on iPhone, and it was just oh man, it's embarrassing. But before we actually talk about this particular tweet, let's kind of roll back a little bit, because this has been going on for a few years, right?
Yeah, quite a few years. We've seen celebrities tweet out from the iPhones for different brands. So we saw Gal Gadot do it for Huawei, which Marquez kind of pointed out, and then he got blocked.
That was hilarious. So obviously a lot of you guys will be familiar with Marquez, MKBHD, a good friend, a great content creator, and he actually noticed that Gal Gadot was Wonder Woman herself tweeting a Huawei ad via an iPhone, and it just went viral. Everybody was talking about it, and I referred to Marquez as the Twitter police. So I actually photoshopped a picture of Marquez with a police hat on, which also went viral. That was again so funny because it just went with the whole theme. But what was interesting was back then it wasn't as easy to spot these things, because by default, the Twitter app or the Twitter webpage did not have the ability to see where people had tweeted from. This is something that actually came about more recently, because before you would have to use a third-party app, something like, I believe, Flamingo or
TweetDeck or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what Marquez was using to be able to find this. And again, it became a whole thing, because I think a lot of people, a lot of brands, a lot of celebrities, influencers got away with this for some time because it wasn't something that was out in the open. However, I'd say in the past sort of year or so, Twitter has enabled this feature across all devices. So whether you're using the Android app, whether you're using the iPhone app, whether you're on a desktop web browser, you'll be able to see where somebody has tweeted from. So it started happening less and less up until but it still happens, obviously, because last week that tweet again, it got a lot of traction online, and it is something that's definitely quite embarrassing. Why and how does this end up happening?
It's a very simple process. So Rene Ricci put out a video about it that was pretty explanatory, but I wanted to expand on that because I think he kind of mentioned that, look, a lot of people in agencies use iPhones, and that is very, very true. You do have a lot of iPhone users there in agencies. So, but also you have to think about it in terms of the mobile operating systems. There are only two. So it's a 50-50 chance, first of all. So
Okay.
half of the people on the planet use iPhones, right? I wouldn't say half, but we know the ratio is
Yeah, I
almost one
mean,
to one.
there's a large
Yeah,
portion. Yes.
there's a large portion. So that's also a thing. And the thing also is that a lot of I'm not trying to create boundaries or borders, but more men use Android devices than women, and more women are in advertising agencies, at least within that realm. So there's a possibility as well that it could skew that way. But the thing here, I think, what's really important is that with different agencies, you do have, of course, the brand saying, "Here, look, here's our device. Please use it." But what happens is people just use whatever they're most comfortable with at that time. So the
Hmm.
agency, or even in Gal Gadot's, for her, to her defense, she probably didn't tweet it out. It was probably one of her assistants or a rep or something like that.
Or
To
somebody
just
who's
has,
managing the agency campaign.
yeah, handles her account and their campaign.
Hmm.
So this probably did that. So that's usually what happens, and this is why that kind of it kind of plays into the hand of Apple's free advertising as well.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a few things I want to touch on here because it seems like there's two elements. There's influencers, firstly, and then there's
Yeah, yeah.
actual agencies. So what you'll find is celebrities and influencers, a lot of them will use an iPhone, in particular for social media. Even myself, for a lot of things that I do on Instagram, for instance, I'll use an iPhone because it just is a bit more optimized, so it works a little bit better. But generally, you'll find their daily driver is an iPhone. But then what will happen is they'll get a deal from an Android smartphone manufacturer, whether that be Huawei, Xiaomi, whoever it is, Samsung. And, they're obviously not going to say no to this deal, but they'll still be using their iPhone because that's what they've been using all the time. They're not going to actually transfer over just for this campaign. They'll always have an iPhone in their pocket, and then it's easy to make that slip up, right? Now that's one element of things. Now on that side of things, my advice to brands would be find influencers and celebrities that actually do use your products, right? Because I mean, it's all well and good giving a stack of money to a celebrity who is gonna pretend to use your device, and it's going to be different whether you go to somebody who's actually using your device and will carry on using it on a daily basis. That is much better promotion. So I think that is an element of it. I think research should be done on that side of things where you are working with the right people who fit with your brand and are not just, talking about your brand because they're being paid for it, right?
Yes and no. I agree with that almost 80%. I also say that, look, honestly, say for instance, it is great for a brand to work with someone like The Rock because The Rock will help you move certain things. And The Rock might or might not be an iPhone user, right? I mean, or an Android user. I don't know. I don't know. I think what you need to do is you need to actually have a strict policy and actually follow through with how that actually works. AKA, number one, you tell The Rock, okay, look, all your messaging, it's got to be in the contract. All your messaging, because we're going to talk about contracts, right? All your messaging about our product has to be from our product, right?
Yes.
That's the kind of stuff you have to do. And then you just basically ask The Rock or whoever that celebrity is and say, with celebrities, it's a little bit different. It's like, okay, who's managing this? If it's going to be that guy, here's the Huawei device, here's the Samsung device, here's the OnePlus. That is where you be taking pictures, tweeting, and all that kind of stuff from.
Yeah.
It's a
I,
clear way of doing, which is why we've seen less of that stuff from celebrities
Yeah.
now,
I think,
as
okay,
opposed
no,
to
no, I
iPhone.
totally agree. Yeah. Sometimes there is a certain push that you'll get from a particular celebrity, which you're not really going to get from somewhere else. But I also do see, a lot of brands working with influencers who may not use their products. I mean, anything that we work
That
with,
I agree. Yeah.
we will use that product day in, day out and actually use it for the content that we're making because that's what we are, right? We're content creators and we love playing around with these different devices. And then the other side of it is obviously the agency side of it. When you do see a big brand account such as Samsung, they have multiple different people, and they might have an agency that's managing that account. And obviously, within that agency, there's going to be multiple people who will be, sending tweets or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And this slip up can happen. So, I'm not like kind of blaming Samsung for it. It happens. It's not that, somebody that's working at Samsung that's actually done this. They most likely are using a Samsung device, but somebody who is potentially part of an agency who who might be handling many accounts actually. So that person, I do want to kind of, in their defense, they might be managing multiple accounts. So they might have one account for Samsung, but they might have multiple different accounts for other brands as well. So it's easy for that slip up to happen. But in 2021, it shouldn't happen, especially based on what we've already seen happen many, many times. It's something that I think brands really need to be very, very strict on. Make sure it's in contracts. Make sure it's emphasized over and over again. Because when that does happen, it's very, very embarrassing, especially before the day of a launch.
Yeah, true. And maybe that's the reason why Apple is not on Twitter, because they don't want
Well,
any
that
people
might be
to
one of
mess up.
the reasons. But so Apple, if you've ever been onto the Apple Twitter handle, there are no tweets. It's empty, right? Now, Apple does use Twitter. I mean, Apple obviously is a brand which understands marketing very well and understands the value of marketing. And you will see that, for instance, when there is a new Apple event, the hashtag Apple event will have its very own Twitter
Icon.
icon, and they were even the ones that had I believe the first animated icon, which really, if it want the like button. So if you press a like, it does a little animation. And again, it's obviously really useful to have that Twitter engagement. And I've also seen lots of tweets that do come up, and I'm like, oh, Apple's tweeted. But when I actually look on the tweet, it says promoted tweet. So it's a tweet that's been written by Apple and promoted, so paid to be promoted, but it's not actually posted on their Twitter profile. So, I mean, I know Apple is a brand that's quite careful. Like if you look on most of their YouTube channels, I believe maybe all of their YouTube channels, comments are disabled on their videos.
Yeah.
Have you noticed
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And
yeah, it is. I think it's a very simple thing. So I've always considered Apple a marketing company first, than actually a product company. Apple, I think, in my mind, Apple has changed to be a marketing lifestyle company first before a technology company. Not saying they don't make tech products, not saying they don't make good tech products. I'm saying the thinking of the company starts with that. And I think it's very clear on how their Twitter, their Instagram, all the different channels approach, even YouTube. As you mentioned on Twitter, right? It's very simple. I think when they got on Twitter, they realized, like, you saw certain people, or even look at someone like Marquez, for instance. Marquez doesn't follow a lot of people. You keep that limited status, right? And it's for a brand like Apple, if Apple were to ever follow one person, let's say they decide to follow Barack Obama, right? Everybody's just going to just go wild.
yeah,
That I think just that idea, not saying they will, but just the idea is enough. And of course, that idea that also they're not tweeting anything out. They're keeping it they're like Disney of the tech world. There's a certain PC balance that they provide.
no, but the thing is, the way I see it is, okay, if they only followed the Apple execs, for example, Tim Cook, etc., or they didn't follow anybody, because I mean they are promoting tweets, right? So they are still getting into people's timelines, but they are paying to get into people's timelines. Wouldn't it make sense for them just to organically tweet if they don't want rude replies or whatever? Twitter now has an option where you can actually make it so that only people that are either you follow or the people that are tagged can reply to that tweet. So essentially, Apple could tweet out from their main account, organically get masses of reach organically as well, and they wouldn't have to deal with those, or people saying, "Oh, no, you should get an Android instead." That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is it a case of they want to remain as the zero tweet account? Is that something that's kind of developed to a point where they want to kind of maintain that? I wonder.
I think maybe I think it's because that feature is newer on Twitter now. I think when they got on Twitter, that feature wasn't there.
It wasn't.
So it wasn't there. So they were like, all right, we don't want to do that. We'll just kind of promote the tweets, it's more effective. But I think also, again, too, for them, it's not necessary because we honestly do the job for them for free without
We
even the
do.
effort of typing,
We
right?
do, but
So,
I
so
think
why,
that
why,
it'd be so much more though. This is the thing, because I mean, at the end of the
d-
day, if you are
I
tweeting,
disagree. I disagree from one standpoint, right? I think if you look at it from the pure marketing perspective, is it is always better to come from not from the horse's mouth in this case, from the horse's mouth of the influencer, the person who has the direct connection to the fans. Because there's only Apple fanboys you get, like that will really love the Apple stuff, and you still get a lot of hate back and forth. They might not be on that, but it might be on somebody else's retweet, as opposed to when we talk about it, and then it's a continuous flow, and it's a continuous flow, and it's a continuous flow. I think they look at it from that continuous general flow, and they tend to trend anyway whenever they have the announcement because now it's a collective of everyone, both for and against, looking at it from different standpoints.
I agree, but then they also do promote tweets. Remember, so I got a tweet
Yeah,
the other day, which was, and as I said, it was in my timeline, and I thought it was Apple has tweeted from their account, but then when I looked closely at the bottom, it said promoted tweet. So what they were doing is
yeah.
it was actually a tweet, but it was promoted. Now again,
It's
this is
an
something
ad.
that they've
It's
paid for.
pretty much an ad.
It's an
Yeah.
ad, but you could do that. I mean, the organic reach that they would get would be insane from their main account. And even if it was the occasional tweet and it was just one-way stream, no responses whatsoever. I mean, now that this option is available on Twitter, if somebody from Apple is watching or listening to this, then I think it's something that they should definitely consider now, because I think it would really boost even more than it is right now. Really boost engagement and see things that are coming from which they are already promoting anyway.
I mean, I see that point. I think right now, I think the guys at Apple are thinking like me. They're like, nah, man, let's just write it. We don't tweet anyone. Like, it's cool. Like they have a status that is so undeniably hard to get on Twitter for somebody that big or an organization that big. I mean, the only people that have that status are people who are brand new to Twitter and are not following anyone. That's pretty much it. So on the other hand, they have something else that is it's just unique on the platform. And right now, it's not like they're wasting money spending on ads. It's like for them, it's not a bother. It's just part of the process. Again, it's kind of like the Disney ideal. I think you kind of, the three companies that I always consider that do marketing the same way are Disney, Apple, and Nintendo. Family friendly, PC, a little bit wholesome in general. That's what they
Okay.
do. So
All
this
right.
kind of adds to that element.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if Apple ever does tweets from their official account. If they do, you'll hear about it here for sure. Moving on, WhatsApp. WhatsApp has
Yeah.
been the talk. I mean, people have been talking about it so much. I've been getting so many comments and requests to talk more about it. What's going on? So, following on from the whole privacy policy update, which you had to agree to, or you would no longer be able to use the app. The initial date, I'm just checking here, 8th of February it was. Then, obviously, the whole thing happened with people boycotting WhatsApp in masses, moving to apps like Signal and Telegram. Now, WhatsApp has actually gone back and moved that date back to the 15th of May. So that's quite a significant pushback. So now you don't have to agree to any particular policy up until the 15th of May. Are they going to change anything, or are they just trying to use this time to communicate better, which they didn't do in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think they need to change anything because honestly, first of all, WhatsApp and Facebook needs to fire their PR firm. Like, fire. Those guys need to go because the communication was really poor. Second, WhatsApp is facing backlash because of Facebook itself. So even though the communication was poor, as soon as it was poor, you went Facebook. Data is going to Facebook, not exactly knowing what the data is. That's the poor communication. Everyone just went, forget it, I'm out, right? And we have some information from WhatsApp stating exactly at least what WhatsApp protects and secures in terms of your personal messages. I can read it out for you guys here.
Yeah, so they actually posted this. They should have, I mean, to be honest, they should have posted this to begin with. But
First,
obviously they've learned their lesson. They made it in a simple graphic. He can read it out for you.
yeah, sure. It says WhatsApp cannot see your personal messages or hear your calls, and neither can Facebook. It also says WhatsApp does not keep logs of who everyone is messaging or calling. WhatsApp cannot see your shared location, and neither can Facebook. WhatsApp does not share your contacts with Facebook. WhatsApp groups remain private. You can set your messages to disappear. You can also download your data.
Yeah, I mean that's what they needed initially. If they had initially come in with that, I think it would have, clarified. Because I think a lot of people. I mean, we were talking about this in the previous podcast where it was clear that messages are still encrypted end to end. Nobody can read your messages, but that didn't seem to be communicated as clear as it is now. My question is, how many people who have already made the jump now are going to be like, okay, maybe I'll use it, or is that bad publicity, enough for them to have I mean, they've obviously already had a significant hit, but is that going to be a permanent significant hit for them?
I don't think permanent. I think what it is I'll put it this way. A lot of people moved to Telegram and Signal, more to Telegram than Signal, just because of the way Signal is. I think, for people like me and you, or people like us in general who are, first or second generation immigrants, you've got family from different parts of the world, you are still going to use WhatsApp. It's just the way it is because, we've got
It's
family
so
members
embedded.
who are embedded in there. I think what they need to do, I think they've lost the Western consumer, and that's not the consumer they were going for in the first place. I think Zuckerberg has really made his mind up to basically reach out to the rest of the world and gain that foothold in market. The issue is that they did two things that were wrong. Number one, they should not have made the policy a mandate to stop using the service. They should have done it as a clear update of rules and rules and permissions, that this is what it's going to do and this is what it will not do. But you just have to agree to that, like any other rules updates that we get for different things, right?
Do you think they'll change it so then by 15th of May they'll have an option to opt out potentially? Or is that just not something
Yeah,
that's feasible?
I think they will have an option to opt out because I think they will look at how much they're bleeding in between
Yeah.
now and then, and decide, okay, look, let's just put it in cleaner terms and tell people this is what it is. This is so that businesses can allow data, and this is for money transfer. If you're transferring to another individual, and also if you're doing payments, because there are certain things you need for that to happen.
Oh, yeah, of
You
course.
need certain information. And I think that's what they were not clear. And we spoke about this, how WhatsApp was looking to get into mobile payments, especially in India. And I know very well that, I'm originally from Nigeria. And in Nigeria, since at least the early 2000s, we've been doing text payments back home. And we still do text payments. I literally see a friend, you're like, okay, can you loan me, $200? I'm like, all right, I'll just text your number with my bank code, and I give you $200. So they've been doing that for a while, but now everyone is on WhatsApp. And you really can't do that on WhatsApp because it's just a messaging app. So you still need, that's why I said it's actually an important thing that if you want to use that service or if that's going to expand, just like how WeChat does it. And I think WhatsApp looks at this as there's an opportunity for them to gain because, let's be honest, they're also in China. Even if they're number two in China or even number three, and they only have 100 million users in China, that's a lot of users. And then you've got the rest of the world that you expand on. I think they are fine, and everyone's making a big brouhaha. But honestly, in the West, whether it's the U.S. or the U.K., Facebook doesn't really care. I honestly will put it that way. Facebook and WhatsApp doesn't care because we have become a bit stale in terms of the way we use technology. We stick to iPhone, Android. We stick to this or that. The rest of the world is exploring. That's the difference.
So it seems like, I mean, the 15th of May pushback is to buy them some time as well to kind of figure out what to do and how to kind of get out this mess that they've created themselves. So it buys them some time, but potentially we think that, because of the amount of damage that has been done, it may be something that they allow you to opt out of. So it's just like, okay, if you don't want to connect with businesses, you don't want to make payments, then you can opt out. And that way it might buy back some of the confidence for some of those people, because I'm seeing, like, especially in India, obviously WhatsApp is massive, but it has taken a massive, massive hit in India because many users, the news that they get is from WhatsApp, and the news right now that they're getting from WhatsApp is that WhatsApp
It's
is
not good.
bad.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So
it's like backfired on them. That news, that fake news, is like, oh yeah, people can. As I said, I'm not saying that. I mean, I personally still use WhatsApp. A lot of my family's on there. Obviously, I'm based in the UK, so EU and UK are not affected by these policy changes. But I'm not saying it's the perfect app, but it is still very easy to communicate with a lot of people on there. However, I am also using other alternatives. In particular, Telegram is something that I'm using because I can use it on multiple devices. Signal, as secure as it is, and I like the fact that it's very, very secure, because it's limited to one device to make it even more secure, it kind of brings me back to the problems that I had with WhatsApp. So I'm
I
currently
think if I
sticking
would,
to Telegram.
I think I was if I was WhatsApp, I would allow the opt out feature, but also update the app to include all the features, or at least a lot of the features that we see in Telegram, especially the multi logins, some of the things to do with notifications, as well as emojis and all that stuff, like the fun elements of it, and say, hey, look, we made some changes. We didn't clearly express it properly, and this is clearly what it is. What we want to do is also have an area where if a company that you reach out to, they can actually set up a specific chat line for you. So whenever you're dealing with a Samsung, because you have Samsung phone, it's an immediate response. It's kind of like Twitter, in a sense where you can connect with them. I think these are the kind of things that if they released it out, you're not going to gain those people back, but then people will go, oh, okay, all right, great. But honestly, the best thing for WhatsApp to do, and Facebook as a whole, I'm going to say this quickly, we can talk about this later, is that they need to rebrand the general name of the company. The overall company is still called Facebook, which is kind of weird. It should be called Numbers, for instance, and then Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram are different companies there. And the face of Facebook cannot be Mark Zuckerberg. That's just the honest truth.
Ease back to the face of Facebook needs a new face, essentially.
Pretty much.
So what he's essentially saying is that, once again, Facebook needs a new face. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Another app that has been big talk recently, which I actually am very new to. He actually introduced me to, but is something that's quite addicting, and it's very useful, and we've had some great conversations on there, and that is Clubhouse, the app. So, I'm going to let you kind of give us a bit of background on this app, because you were the one that actually introduced me to it. So, let me pass it over to you.
Great. I'm terrible at describing this application. But anyway, Clubhouse is a brand new social network that focuses on voice. So most social networks, whether it's be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the way you communicate with other people on the network is through chat. So basically, you can leave a comment on a YouTube video. You can have a discussion thread on Facebook. You've got 240 characters on Twitter to decide, and then you just kind of stack that up. So, and Instagram, of course, you can leave comments and you can slide into people's DMs over there. But with Clubhouse is a mixture of a couple of things. It feels like Reddit to a certain degree, and I'll explain that in a second. It also feels like a podcast to a certain degree with that. And it also feels like radio as well, because all the communication in Clubhouse is through voice. When you join Clubhouse, you can either jump into a room, and a room is a discussion platform where somebody has set a topic to discuss. And people come in to listen, and you can ask questions by raising your hand within the app, giving some time to speak, and you've got moderators who can actually moderate who's talking and things like that. So what it's kind of morphed into from when it started, I really don't know when it started. I got an invite myself, and what it's morphed into is something that has become very social, because of the ability to hear someone speak and clearly express what they're talking about. So the problem we've always faced on social media is you type something out, it might be a sarcastic joke, or it might be just a sentence. People read that 150 different ways, you know? It could have been really
Trust
funny,
me, I
and
know.
yeah. So that is clearly taken out in Clubhouse because you can explain something and somebody goes like, okay, well, are you saying this? Like, no, 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 I'm sorry. This is exactly what I mean. You've got that opportunity to talk and express there. And that's one of the biggest things about it. A lot of people have found closer connections and being able to just give clearer definitions of things. And what this has morphed for a lot of us creators is there are a lot of creator rooms that show up on Clubhouse where people are talking about what they do. You know, I mean, Mr. Beast is on there talking
Yeah.
about some of the stuff he's done, how he's grown certain things. Some other big TikTok influencers talking about how they grew, some of the things they do. Brands are beginning to jump into that. Some brand managers. One of the coolest ones I listened to was there are two actually. There's a Bitcoin one, and there's one on TikTok and music, talking about how artists are losing recognition because of TikTok. Because once a song goes viral on TikTok, here's the funny part, and it's very true, is I don't know the artist. I just know the song and the dance that goes with it, or at least whatever challenge that goes with it. Right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So it's a great place for conversation and learning. And there's varied conversations out there. You can set up a room for
There's pretty
anything.
much a conversation for everything, whether that be politics, religion, work, career, whatever it is. There's conversations, and I think
Yeah.
for me, the couple of things that I've kind of got from it is networking. I think is a key thing here because it's so easy to kind of just jump into a room and start talking to somebody that's in this room, especially if there's a smaller one. If it's quite a big room, it can be, you might come in as a listener. And that's another element that I like of it as well. Because sometimes, I will jump into a room not to kind of be actively involved as a speaker or somebody that's going to be asking questions, but just as somebody who just wants to listen to whatever is being discussed. So I can just leave that on the side. Normally I'd have like a podcast or something. So it's almost like listening to a podcast. And yeah, it is definitely quite an interesting platform. There's a few things about the platform right now. It is only available on iOS, so you can't get it on
Yeah.
Android. The other thing as well is it's based on an invite system because I think they are trying to manage the amount of demand that they have. So you can't just go in, you have to kind of go into a waiting list. And if you do know somebody that's already on Clubhouse and has an invite, then you can bring them on. And I do think it's the next big thing, and it is something that's picking up very, very fast. And there's I don't know what the exact numbers right now, but there's lots of people using Clubhouse right now, and there's pretty much something there for everybody. And I do think if somebody's thinking of coming onto Clubhouse, firstly, you should follow myself at SuperSaf, and you should follow Thunder at Board at Work, because
Yeah.
we've been hosting a few sessions on there and just having a chat and kind of just giving advice as well to fellow creators and really kind of getting into a conversation. Because one of the things that I find is whenever I'm trying to do say a live stream on Instagram, it gets crazy and there's so many questions, and I've got people saying, "Oh, I've you didn't answer my question." And I'm like, "Yeah, but your question came and then 100 others came straight after it. I can't keep up." Whereas in Clubhouse, you raise your hand, you let somebody in, they can ask their question with voice. It's a lot more personal rather than just some text. You can kind of talk about that topic can expand. Now, I do think you you definitely need a moderator on there because
A
a
very good
lot of
moderator.
times
Yeah.
a lot of times I'll jump into a room and I'll jump out because there'll be somebody going on and on and on about something that's just completely off topic. And that is something that I think that's one of the other challenges that you get with an app like Clubhouse, because some people will, because there's one guy, I jumped into one yesterday and he just was going on about himself, even though this was about a particular topic. I'm not going to go into detail because I don't want to kind of name and shame, but he was just going on about himself, and then you could tell everybody was kind of like, okay, dude, it's time to move on. We know enough about your background. The initial introduction that you do, and you're like, hey, I'm Saf. I have a YouTube channel and I do lots of content creation across different platforms, and that's it. No, this guy went on for 5 minutes, right? About his whole
Yeah.
life history, and it was completely off topic. So that's definitely something that I think needs to be worked on. If you do need some sort of a moderator on there, but it's definitely a fun
Speaking
app.
of that, I have an idea I think we should do, especially when it opens up, and I think this would be pretty great, especially since we do live streams, and those are cool. But I really want to do after a launch of a device, or after we review a device, we can go on Clubhouse and talk about the device, because again, it's going to be very different viewpoints with us talking about it, and
Yeah.
also gives people the opportunity to ask questions. We can bring up a few people at a time. Again, we'll get those things structured out, but I really want to get you guys' idea if you would love to see come and ask us questions and just sit down and listen to maybe the next
Yeah.
iPhone, like the iPhone
a,
13 or something
a
like
lot
that.
more personal as well, and we'll be doing a lot more. So myself and we actually hosted our first Clubhouse room
Actually,
last on the
that was my
weekend.
second. That was that
I
was
said
his
mine
first.
and yours. It was a collective. That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, you don't have to just kind of bring yours. Yeah, it was my second one. Yeah, okay. Tap on the back. So it was our first one that we had hosted. So, but we are going to be doing lots more. So if you are on Clubhouse, if you will be coming onto it, as mentioned, I am at SuperSaf, and E is on board at work with two O's because he struggles to spell. But anyway. But anyway, one of the topic that we were actually talking about, which we went on for about 3 hours because there was so much interesting stuff. We actually had brands.
Before we continue, just so you know that Clubhouse rooms, the longest room I've been in, lasted for 12 hours.
Wow, that's very long session, yeah. But this is the thing, you don't really realize the time going because the conversations can become very interesting, and especially if you've got interesting speakers who are, really carrying that on. That's something that's, I think, really interesting about Clubhouse. But yeah, what the room that we had and we were hosting, we were talking about was about brand deals and how to navigate brand deals, and something that a lot of people are interested in, and something that myself and E have a lot of experience in. A lot of you guys will already know that E is my partnership manager on the channel, and he does handle a lot of my partnerships. So brand deals and how to navigate brand deals. So E, brand deals as influencers, just drop some knowledge here for the listeners.
As an influencer or creator, especially if you're listening to this or you're watching on YouTube, and you're starting your own YouTube channel, or you have a YouTube channel, maybe a brand has reached out to you for a deal. There are a couple of things that we always look at, and it's great to get that opportunity to earn some more money, but always know that you can say no, you can make changes to the contract, and you can also search some of your terms. Now, there's a reason why it's called negotiations, because you and the brand can go back and forth talking about certain things. If a brand says, "Hey, you must do this," and you're like, "Well, I'm sorry, it just won't work on my channel. Viewers just won't like that," then you can negotiate that out.
Correct. So let's just talk about brand deals a little bit more in general. So, one of the ways we as content creators make most of our income, I would say, is through brand deals. And brand deals are very, very important because it allows you to work with the brands that you really wanted to work with, but it also gives you an opportunity to expand and gives you opportunities to do things you wouldn't be able to do otherwise without the partnership of the brand, right? It allows you to
Oh yeah.
increase your production value. It allows you to do something creative. And obviously, right now, especially working with content creators, I know the term influencer gets thrown around a lot, but working with such people is the way to go because traditional advertising does not work as well. One of the things I always say is you could spend literally thousands. I know how much billboards cost, and they cost a lot. You could spend thousands on a billboard. People are going to walk past that billboard and not even see it because they're going to be looking down on their phone. And that's something that I always say,
Yeah.
and that's a pitch that I always give the brands. It's just like people are scrolling through Instagram, people are looking at YouTube videos, and if you really want to connect with those people, the traditional advertising, it's not as effective as it is now, because when you are working with people who have a real genuine connection with their audience, it's almost like a friend, right? And I get this all the time. Whenever I meet somebody that's following the channel for some time, they will kind of come up and they'll be like, Saf, I feel like I know you. Like, it's just one of those things. It's quite personal. I remember the first time I met Candice, Casey's wife, and I never really understood this whole thing when people would come up to me and they'd be like, Saf, I kind of feel like I know you, and I'm like, it was very new to me, because this would be the first time I'm ever seeing them, so it would be kind of very one-sided in a sense. But then when I met Candice, she's lovely. We met and had a chat, and I was just like, Candice, I know you probably get this all the time, but I kind of feel like I know you. And she's like, oh yeah, everybody says that. And that's because I know Casey, and I obviously watch his videos, and seeing her in his videos, I obviously watching his videos all the time kind of made like this connection, which I didn't realize was there, where I kind of feel like I know her, right? And it's almost like it's a friend without that person actually knowing who you are, right? And that connection is worth so much, because it's a lot more personal than something that's a bit more two-dimensional, that's just going one way. And that's, I think, that's something that brands are now realizing a lot more, working with content creators and influencers. And that's something that they want to get into a lot more as well. And I definitely think it's the right way to go. And if you are a content creator and influencer, brand deals are really good, and they're really good for you to actually expand and do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how the Colonel gets paid. Sorry,
Which brands is he partnering with, I wonder?
Hey, sorry, he's got a non-disclosure agreement. He can't talk about
Non-disclosure agreement. So yeah, I mean, so what I want to emphasize is working with brands is great, but it is important to firstly work with the brands that you are aligned with, and also be clear with your audience when you are working with a brand. I think that's very important to maintain that relationship, because again, if you are just trying not to disclose your partnership with the brand, we've seen that that's actually, and I still see it today. A lot of influencers that I see do not properly disclose that they're working with a brand. So I think that's, again, very important. I'm not even going to go into the legalities of that, but I think that's very important. More so for me is because I don't want to betray the trust of my audience. The audience trusts me to bring them something, so I will not do a sponsored comparison. I will not do a sponsored review, for example, and that's something that I've stuck by. Yes, I'll do an unboxing, for example, because that's something that I'm just giving the overview. I'm unboxing a product. I'm not doing an in-depth review. My in-depth reviews will be very critical of a product, and personally, I know others do it, but I do not do sponsored reviews for that reason. So I think it's also very important to kind of navigate brand deals in a way that still maintains your integrity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think in our case, one of our I guess I'll call them channel sponsors is Spigen, right? It's a brand that we've used personally first
Many
before
years.
even working with them, many years, and for us it's very seamless. But also, like Saf said, you've got to be clear about this, not just even for your, for the honesty's sake, but also the fact that your audience is not stupid. You cannot treat them like they are dumb. So you've just got to be clear and let people know, okay, look, this is what I'm doing. It's an integration, and or this is a dedicated video, and keeping that dedicated video away from reviews. Do not treat it as a review. Do not place in a review. You can do something fun with it, and that's again where we talked about the production value, where you're checking out the product and you're doing something really exciting with it, because now you've got more income that you can put into production, and maybe rent something, or rent a location,
Yeah.
or buy a set, whatever the case may be. You can do fantastic things with that, and I think
Yeah.
that is very important. And I think
Yeah.
once you pass that, once you have that in mind, then you can start thinking of doing brand deals. At least you've got the right mindset to look at it.
One of the things I would also say is, if you have created a video in the past that's done well for you, maybe that's for a similar product to what this brand offers, or maybe if it's a product that this brand does offer, right? And you've done a video of it, and you can actually show the results. You can say, hey, look, I did this video, here it is, and you can really display your worth to this brand. They will be much more likely to actually, respond to you and hopefully work with you as well. Now, if they do decide to work
Yeah.
with you, then you will have a contract. Now, I saw a tweet from Isaac Canupsi who was basically saying, always read contracts properly. And this is something that I think a lot of people make mistakes of and get into contracts. Contracts are very complicated things. And obviously, we are not legal experts, just to kind of give a disclaimer. But there's a few things that we have picked up over the many years of going through contracts, and we'll share some stories of some of the more out there contracts that we've had. But we're going to give three main things to look out for. Now, obviously, there's a long list of things to look out for, and please do read contracts and get some proper advice. But we're going to tell you three things that we always look out for immediately when we see a contract. So,
Yeah.
firstly, it's the word that I actually hate with a passion, and it's something that really, really works me up, and that is the term exclusivity. Exclusivity essentially means that if you sign up to this contract for the period that you agree, you cannot work with or sometimes even cover a competitor brand. Now, doing what we do, myself and E, we cover tech products. So, we cover smartphones, we cover loads of things. Exclusivity is a very tricky thing because that means we could potentially not be able to make videos. Say, for instance, I have an exclusivity deal with a smartphone maker. I can't cover another smartphone for a particular amount of time. That doesn't make sense for me. So a lot of the times I will not accept exclusivity. Well, pretty much always.
Oh, yeah.
However, it can be important. It can be somewhat important because a brand, essentially the reason why they'll put exclusivity in there is because, say for instance, you're working with Ford and you post something with Ford, and then the day after you post something with, I don't know, BMW, right? And then that can be, obviously it can come across bad for the brand. So understandably they might want some exclusivity. I think the key thing to remember, which we look at, is it needs to be reasonable. The
Yeah,
exclusivity
it
period
definitely
needs to be reasonable.
it definitely needs to be reasonable. I think the other thing too is exclusivity covers two dimensions. So, like Saf said, there's the dimension of, hey, if I'm working with a smartphone manufacturer, let's call Motorola, right? And it means that within that time period, and let's call the time period 2 weeks, I cannot cover Samsung, LG, Apple, you name it. But here's the other part of exclusivity that some brands do that is really tricky. They say you cannot work with a competitor, but it also means a competitor in all categories. So, for instance, and I'm not saying Samsung has done it, so don't get me wrong, but let's say Samsung says exclusivity on the smartphone because you're doing a deal for, say, the Galaxy S21. And you're like, okay, cool, fine. I'm not going to cover another smartphone for 2 weeks. I'm fine with that. But then a laptop manufacturer like HP says, hey, cool, yeah, want to do a deal with you next week. And you're like, cool. And then you read the contract properly from Samsung. It says you cannot work with competitors across the board. So Samsung also makes laptops as well, which means
And
now
this is
you're
where
locked up from that HP deal.
So I think getting specifics of the exclusivity, because as I said, sometimes it can be reasonable. Generally, we do not accept exclusivity as standard just because it's something that can be very, very tricky based on what we do. But if there is something that's reasonable, say for example, okay, for a week, if you're working with a case manufacturer, you're not going to show another case. If you're working with a particular makeup brand or something. But I think the other thing is it's also how big is this deal? If it's a one-off deal, then I would definitely not accept exclusivity for a long period of time. Couple of weeks, fair enough. But if there's a brand deal that comes along and you're really excited about this brand deal, but they say, which I have had in the past, somebody says that you can't work with a competitor for a whole year, and it's just like, sorry, no, because now you've basically, for one project, you have closed the doors for me for many others that might come down the line. Now, fair enough, if it's a recurring project, so maybe it's a 12-month deal where you will be getting, maybe a sponsored video or, a sponsored post every couple of weeks, every month or so. then that's kind of different. Then okay, maybe you can be a bit more flexible. You can be like, all right, I can do a
Yeah.
year exclusivity because we've got this ongoing deal. But I think that's one thing that we definitely look out for in contracts straight away, and it's something that I would recommend because we've heard of stories of people not being able to work with potentially better, more fit brands because they're kind of stuck with this clause in the contract.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I think the other thing too is you move from exclusivity is the term ownership. Control F is your best friend for searching for these things, and that always pertains to the brand or the brand's agency owning your content
Yeah.
after it is made. And that is just a no, like just a no.
Yeah.
There's almost no there's almost
he,
no
he
way
just
that
jumps
is going
in.
to be.
He just jumps in
Yeah,
as soon as he
I,
sees that. Boom! Stop.
no.
You shall not
The only
pass.
way the only way that is accepted is if you're creating content for the brand to use on their own channel, and then that is fine because now all you are is a creator that is basically making a product for them. But if it's going to live on your channels, whether it's your Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever those channels are, I just say no, like flat out.
So there's a few aspects here. So when it comes to ownership of content, right? Now, if they own the content that's sitting on your channel, now say if it's a dedicated post on Instagram, maybe it's a dedicated video on YouTube, that's something that I think is negotiable to a certain extent because maybe the campaign finishes and they're like, okay, is it all right if you take the video down? And you're like, okay, fine, I'll take it down, right? That's something that you can negotiate, right? If it's an integration, there's zero negotiation there because your video, they only own that part of a video. Now, if anybody knows how YouTube works, unfortunately, you cannot edit videos once they're uploaded. And there is a YouTube editor tool, which is absolute trash. It does not work. I've tried it before many times. It just does not do its job properly. So if you have an integration and, maybe 3 weeks down the line, they decide they've changed their messaging for whatever reason and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, can you take that video down? And that video is like on 1 million views. And you're like, no, I'm not going to take it down because it's still getting views. It's getting lots of eyes on my channel. Yours was only the integration. Now, if you've signed that they, have that right to do that, then you have no choice and you would have to take that, video down or, it could get legal. So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect as well is of them using your content for advertising, for marketing, right? Now, one of the things here is it might seem, and for me before, it used to seem like, oh, awesome, they want to use my video, I'm going to get more views. And a lot of the times, a lot of brands will be cheeky and try to come in and try to pitch it to you that way, that, oh, hey, we're going to get so many more people to watch your content. And like he just told me, he's like, nah, that's baloney. Like, no. That is all. They're going to be making a lot of money from your content that you've produced. So that needs to be, if that's the case and they want that, that's absolutely fine. Don't get me wrong. But that needs to be an additional fee on the content that you are creating because now they are going to be getting much more use out of it. And if you knew how much a lot of brands actually spend in terms of pushing these ads, whether that be through online or especially TV ads, I mean, the amount of money that they have to push in to actually get those out.
A Super Bowl ad is an average $1.5 million.
Exactly. I mean, now I'm not saying, your video is going to end up on Super Bowl or something like that.
I know.
But generally, they will be spending a lot to promote that content. Now, if they can spend a lot to promote that content, then why can they not pay you the fee, the licensing fee for usage of that content? And that's something that's very important. So look out for that in contracts as well. If they do want to use it, it's absolutely fine. But also specify a term, right? You don't want to give them the rights to use something for eternity because,
Forever.
for instance, if you then go and use, let me just give an example. Say, for example, you're working with a particular makeup brand, right? And then, 3 years down the line, you start you become super famous, you're now a celebrity, and you launch your own makeup brand, right? And they start pushing ads from 3 years ago because you were featured in theirs. That's going to be a conflict of interest. So you need to specify a term as well. So you need to be like, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, whatever it is, specify that, where it's going to be. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be, on television, etc.? Also have a look at these things. Now, the last one that we're going to be talking about, the last thing to look out for, I think is this is something that really works me up. And we'll also finish off with some crazy contracts that we've had in the past. Well, crazy terms in contracts.
Yeah.
We're not going to specify any specific details of who it was from, etc. But we'll go into that and some really funny things which you guys will be shocked about. But this is something that, thankfully I've not had to deal with myself. But you were mentioning.
I've dealt with this quite a bit. It's basically, it's not stated in the contract, and it's something you have to find in between the lines. But it's basically right to first refusal, and this is not really from brands; it's from their agencies. So what I've noticed over the years is an agency who works with a brand will first of all they try and get your license your video or your content for free without paying licensing. So that's which we talked about. But there's also something that they do. They will put in a clause stating that you cannot work with this brand or sometimes with any other brand without getting the right of first refusal from the agency for a set period of time. Usually it's about a year. So example, for instance, say you were like a home decor creator, and you just did a deal for a brand new Kenmore stove, right? You've done it, but then in the next 6 months, or even in the next year, Kenmore's like, oh, we've got a new model, but Kenmore doesn't use this agency anymore because whatever deal they have is done. They use a brand new agency, or they reach out to you directly, and Kenmore says, look, we love that last video, we want to do an update with a new one. We've got we don't even have a new stove, but we've got a new fridge, we've got a new microwave, and we want to do it. You cannot do that brand deal without going back to the agencies, because basically you now have to give a cut to that agency, or at least, sorry, the agency has to get a cut from the brand. So basically, there's no way you can do that deal unless you go back to the agency you worked with last year. And sometimes you cannot do any deals at all. Within that field, without going back to the agency. It's one of the most mind-boggling things where I'm like,
man. I mean, I've had worse. I've had worse in contracts, which we'll get to. But one of the things, it's almost like saying, so I introduced you to Kogan, right? So because he's my friend and I introduced you, every time you want to talk to Kogan, you need to come through me first.
Yeah.
He's my friend, okay? No, but this is the thing. So again, we're not painting a bad picture. There's so many great agencies that I've worked with, and I love working with over and over again. And there's so many great people behind some of these agencies as well. So don't get me wrong, we're not like kind of saying all agencies or brands are evil, but there are these things that you do have to look out for, because then you're stuck. So essentially what they're trying to do is, we bought you this brand, we introduced you to this brand, so we want to make sure we have some sort of, we're gonna cling on to this for as long as possible, which is very unfair. As possible. Yeah, which is very unfair. So the other thing to remember as well with it when it comes to contracts is that you can negotiate. So you can say, I'm sorry, but I can't accept that. Everything's up for negotiation. Yeah, I mean, they might come to you with an exclusivity clause for 3 months. You could be like, actually, I can only do a month, right? And then you might meet in the middle for a month and a half, for example, right? And again, that's something that can be done. So remember, not everything, even though it is in black and white set, it is not set. It can go back and forth. You can always get advice. Now, you mentioned that this was one of the worst things. I mean, I've had worse in contracts. I'm going to mention something again. I'm not mentioning any particular names, but this one contract, I should read it a few times, because essentially what it said was they would have rights to remove the content for if it came up, which to me was kind of like, hey, it's the video is on there. If, for example, 6 months down the line your messaging changes and you want me to take that video down, it's fine. It's not an integration. I don't really care, right? But then I carried on reading, and it also said that if it came to it, then I would also have to take down my social media profiles. And I was literally angry. I was on the phone to E, and I was just like, can you believe they've put this in the contract? Why would you put something like this in the contract? Now, I think the thinking behind it is, say, for example, you got involved in something that was illegal or something, and you were reflecting, essentially you're reflecting bad on the brand because they had worked with you. They basically, bring their lawyers to the table. You've agreed to this. take down your social media profiles because it's going to prevent damage of us being associated with you. Essentially, I think that's what the kind of thinking behind it was. But I was just like,
Yeah.
no, you can pay me whatever amount of money you want. You have zero rights to my social media profiles, which are mine. You have rights to your content that I'm posting. Sure, as I said, if it is a case and it's not an integration and it's a dedicated one, we can negotiate that. But there is no way. And that was, I think, one of the craziest ones. I also have another story. What's the craziest thing that you've had in a contract, E?
I was going to actually add to that and say, like, well, actually, if they wanted to do that, if they can just, I can put a clause in that if you want me to take it down, if I did something wrong, just $10 million, and we're cool. Yeah.
Yep, that's it. I can retire. I can have my beach house and
Yeah,
relax.
I don't need to be on social media anymore. That's cool, man. I'm fine with
Man.
that.
But
No, I mean,
yeah,
I was going to
carry on.
say, for me, a lot of mine have been like long and weird exclusivities. I had one where the term of the contract was literally 1 week. No, sorry, it was 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, cool. But then they added that first to right to refusal, right, which was literally 1 year, and then the exclusivity period was not stated as exclusivity. They stated it completely differently. That I didn't catch. It was my buddy Sam who caught it. Basically, it was exclusivity period was 2 years, but the way it was written, I can't describe it, but basically you would miss it in a sentence if you didn't actually, because he does a lot of contracts for what he does for
He
work.
knows these
So
things, yeah.
for him, he just came up and was like, dude, no.
No.
And this was a brand that I was working with to do a deal, and I was like, guys, you said it was 1 week, and when I spoke to them, they said, oh, the term for exclusivity would be the 2 weeks that we talked about. I was like, okay, I can do that. And then I'm like, why are you doing right to first refusal? And then why are you locking me in for 2 years? Where's this other statement coming from?
Yeah. No, but this.
So it's stuff like that for me.
Man. Yeah, I had another one which I also want to mention before we finish off. This was a few years ago, so this one when I had a full-time job, it was actually a very good brand deal. Like for me, I mean, especially when I was working full-time, they came in with a big offer, and I was just like, whoa, okay. I was like, oh man, like I almost fell down. But one of the clauses in there was I cannot say anything negative about the brand for a year, right? Now, considering I'm a tech reviewer, right? I'm like, what? So essentially, what they were doing was buying my basically buying me off
Buying
for
your
the year.
silence.
Yeah, buying my silence for a year, essentially. I was just like, I'm sorry, but I can't accept this because obviously I'm a tech reviewer, right? Now, if it was a brand deal for trainers, right? So Nike, if you want to sponsor me, I won't say anything negative about Nike ever. you know, I absolutely, I'll sign, right? Because at the end of the day, it's I kind of get it. Like they don't want you to have a deal and then 6 months down the line, kind of like badmouth it. But I mean, I'm quite professional. I'm like, look, I'm very constructive in my feedback, and I will constructively criticize
Yeah.
products that I'm reviewing. If I'm comparing one product against another, which I do a lot, if there's something wrong with that product, I don't care who it's from. I'm gonna say there's something wrong with it, right? Now, as I said,
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm quite professional in the way I cover my videos. I don't use bad language, and a lot of the times, if I do constructively criticize something, it's actually brands actually appreciate that. They'll go ahead and improve it for the next version, and it's something that I will praise afterwards as well. But yeah, this brand wanted me to not say anything negative, and I said I'm sorry, but as I said, I will constructively criticize stuff that comes along, and I did lose out on that deal, and like just to kind of emphasize that this was at a time when I was working full time 9 to 5, and the money that they came in would have helped me out massively. Like it would have been a big help, right, to me while I was working. But for me, that short-term payment was not worth the long-term integrity of my channel. And again, it comes back to when it comes to brand deals, integrity is important for what you do. Now going back, I'm so glad that I stuck to my guns and I did not accept that deal, because had I done that, my channel would have been affected essentially, potentially in that way. So I'm glad I didn't do that and I stuck to it. And then eventually now it's just like, that doesn't even matter. Like that's kind of like a back thought, but just want to
Yeah.
emphasize that contracts are complicated. They can be lots of things. Obviously, we've just mentioned a few things to look out for. What's the craziest thing that you've seen in a contract? Do, like, if you're on YouTube, do drop a comment. We'd love to kind of hear a few of these, and we will be doing more of like discussions like this on Clubhouse. So once again, do follow us. I'm at SuperSaf, and he is at Bored at Work, and that's the episode. It was lots of interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed it, once again, if you're an Apple podcast, do leave a rating. It really does help the podcast push to others who hopefully will benefit from it as well. If you're on YouTube, then again, do get involved, subscribe, and on your favorite podcast streaming platform, do follow along as well. We'll be back next week with some more interesting stuff. This is Saf on SuperSaf Speaks with my co-host,
Thunder E from Border Work.
and we'll see you next time.